Continuing our ongoing gem series, we're turning to the big bad weapon the Diamond Authority plan to unleash. As always, I'll be filling you in on its history and turn to real-world influences to see if they affected this creature's creation. What's up, guys? I'm Kris Carr, and today I'm talking to you about the cluster from Steven Universe. Before we dive in, I want to give a big ol' shout out to our super nerd sponsor of the day, Aaliyah Seward. Thanks to gems like them, I get to keep talking to y'all about space rocks and then some, so thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We're excited to announce that Nerdwire is partnering with our sister brands, The Fumble and Holly Scoop, in a fundraising campaign for the Equal Justice Initiative. The EJI is an incredible nonprofit organization that provides legal aid and assistance to those who need it most. There's a link below where you can donate directly to them. I'll fill you in with more details at the end of this video. Now, on to the cluster. First, what exactly is the cluster? Well, it's a cluster of millions of gem shards buried within the Earth. In the episode When It Rains, Peridot explains that Homeworld no longer saw Earth as a viable colony to mass incubate gems, and instead used it as a base for conducting experiments with gem shards, fusing them together to create artificial fusion, a gem geoweapon. When it takes its final physical form, it would be so much larger than the Earth that it would destroy the entire planet. It's implied that Yellow Diamond didn't just find Earth to be a failed colony. She saw it as a terrible reminder of Pink Diamond shattering, and destroying it would help her overcome her grief. This inseparable fusion would be capable of destroying Earth and any other world the Diamond saw fit. Even prior to surfacing and forming, the cluster causes a bit of a ruckus when it tries to emerge in the episode Super Watermelon Island. The cluster tries to emerge from the Earth and causes tremors. Peridot knows it's the cluster causing them, so she and Steven drill deep into the Earth to stop it. Peridot wants to destroy the cluster, but Steven can hear it. He can hear all the gem shards' voices that comprise the cluster, and he falls unconscious. While under, he talks to the cluster and tells it should bond with itself. The cluster starts forming uncontrollably, though, and Steven tries to bubble all the gem shards. Steven snaps out of his slumber, wakes up discovering that the gem shards inside the cluster are bubbling each other themselves. Steven bubbles the bubble, encasing the cluster so it can't destroy the Earth. All is well until Blue and Yellow Diamond come to Beach City to awaken Yellow's experiment. The cluster begins to form, but rather than turning on the Earth, the cluster stabilizes and forms an arm that fights alongside the crystal gems. After the diamonds are defeated, the cluster returns to the Earth's core and, we assume, rebubbles itself. Safety first. I remember after watching the episode Reunited just thinking, okay, so we're just gonna leave that big ol' arm alone? I was happy to see the cluster develop a sense of agency and choose to fight along with the good guys, but I certainly didn't think this was the end of the geoweapon. I kept waiting and waiting and waiting for the cluster to reappear, but it didn't. Back when we were merely speculating what would happen in Steven Universe Future's final episode, we talked about how we didn't get any real closure with the cluster, and how its stabilizing or being healed could be a nice button on the series. This theory gained some traction when Yellow Diamond addressed the experiment in Homeworld Bound, saying she wanted to reconstruct the gems that made up the cluster. Of course, what ultimately happens is that the cluster is still Steven's bud, and comes to his aid in I Am My Monster when Steven morphs into his beastly form. The cluster tries to restrain Steven Zilla as he rages and comforts him alongside his friends, helping nurture him back to his true form. Having the cluster comfort Steven is a beautiful full-circle moment. Steven convinced these gem shards to have hope and to learn to love each other and accept one another, despite being forced into this abomination. And then here they are, fighting for Steven, loving him as he sees himself as a monster, comforting him to reassure him that he isn't one. He is more than the worst things he's done or capable of doing, just like them. And then, bye! The cluster, we assume, just keeps kicking it below the mantle. One of the nice things about Steven Universe Future is the open-endedness of its finale. Steven has a whole future ahead of him with endless possibilities. So, maybe we just have to hope that Yellow follows through on working to restore the cluster gems to their true forms. When it comes to the cluster's personality, it seems to have sort of a collective consciousness, which makes sense. Like I said, there are millions of gem shards in there. We see it operate as a hive mind in Reunited, when the cluster acts as a single, cohesive unit, fighting Yellow Diamond and acknowledging their camaraderie with Steven. Unlike mutated, corrupted gems, the cluster maintains some of its intelligence, probably thanks to that hive mind. It's sharing the brainpower of millions. While forced fusion has often been a metaphor for unhealthy relationships, I feel the cluster is supposed to serve as an allegory for war crimes and biological warfare. Peridot even goes as far as to call it a gemological weapon, which is clearly a play on biological weapons. The World Health Organization defines biological weapons as microorganisms like virus, bacteria, fungi, or other toxins that are produced and released deliberately to cause disease and death in humans, animals, or plants. Biological weapons is a subset of a larger class of weapons referred to as weapons of mass destruction, which also includes chemical, nuclear, and radiological weapons. I don't think I'm making too much of a stretch here when comparing this sort of weapon to the cluster. After all, its purpose is to destroy on a large scale. It fully is intended to be used by the Diamond Authority as a weapon of mass destruction. I think we can also liken Yellow Diamond's experiments to the unethical and inhumane experiments we saw carried out during World War II by all sides. And that includes the US, who conducted tests on the effectiveness of chemical war agents on their own soldiers, typically enlisted men of color. In the world of Steven Universe, we can apply this same notion to these sliver gems that had been deemed defective or less than by an oppressive power, being mixed and mashed together to see what would happen, to weaponize them. Okay, I know some of you in the comments are going to be like, whoa, Kris, this is a kid's show. Calm down. You've been quarantined too long. To that, I shall gently remind you that media is always open to interpretation and analysis. That medium, in this case animation, doesn't determine merit, and inspiration can come from anywhere. Sugar & Co. have taken a stand on issues of mental health, abuse, and human rights consistently throughout Steven Universe. It makes sense to me that a lot of what Yellow does, and what the cluster would reflect, would be some of the more horrifying aspects of real war. But obviously, Rebecca, if I am way off base here, you just let me know. And of course, I want you Steven Universe fans to weigh in on this comparison as well. As I mentioned, the cluster takes on the appearance of an arm, but a skinless, muscular system arm. Like a sawed-off limb from one of the Titans on Attack on Titan. Really, what I think we're looking at here is an écorché, which is French for flayed skin. An écorché is a figure drawn, painted, or sculpted, showing the muscles of the body without skin, normally as a figure study for another work, or as an exercise for an art student. Studying anatomy is incredibly important for artists, especially when it comes to figure drawing. Once you understand how the body can move and function, you're able to draw a figure without reference, and can design a figure that feels natural and alive. Rembrandt, Da Vinci, and Michelangelo were able to all play with different designs and compositions because of their study and intimate knowledge of human anatomy. Studying the why and how of living things allows artists to create truthful images. Understanding the function of muscles really allows one to animate a figure into any kind of motion imaginable. The decision to style the cluster in such a way makes sense to me. The cluster wants form, a stable one. So building the base layer, the skeletal and muscular system, and learning how to work this literal muscle is an exercise in the cluster learning how to move and come together and find its form. Bubbled, the gem looks a lot like an angel or a geode or angel or a quartz. Basically, you take any old geode and give it this rainbow iridescent sheen thanks to some shellac and chemical coating mixed with platinum or silver, and bam! You get this look. Despite being artificially constructed, many people still believe this crystal has healing properties. This stone is said to raise one's vibrations and help ease folks into a state of relaxation and peace, hence its frequent use in meditation practices. I would not say that the cluster offers peace to anyone or relaxation. Frankly, angel aura geodes just look like a mishmash of several gems, which is why I think it could have inspired the cluster's bubbled appearance. Of course, though, these are just my thoughts on the cluster. What I want to know is, what do you guys think? Did I miss anything? Do you have any cluster theories out there like Ronaldo? Hit me with your hot takes below. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and bell so we can keep this conversation going. Once again, I'd like to ask you to join NerdWire in our fundraiser for the Equal Justice Initiative. The Equal Justice Initiative is a nonprofit organization that provides legal representation for prisoners who may have been wrongfully convicted of crimes, poor prisoners without effective representation, and others who may have been denied a fair trial. If you want to be part of the movement, there's a donation link below where you can send donations directly to the fund. Anything helps, and we're so glad that we can share this awesome opportunity to donate with you guys.